Welcome to USA Global TV and Radio, where our mission is to provide education, entertainment, hope, and inspiration. USA Global TV and Radio connects you with experts and audiences all around the world every single day to help you succeed in business and to live a richer life. Visit us at usaglobaltv.com to learn about career and life-changing training and mentoring programs like the Listening Mentor. Subscribe to our newsletter to stay informed about our special programs and offers. Discover how you can become a guest on one of our shows or a host or producer of a USA Global TV and Radio show of your very own. That's USA Global TV and Radio, where the doctor is always in.
Hello, USA Global TV and Radio. Welcome, viewers and listeners. We are having our Talking Heads show today, and I am your presenter, Mariska du Preez. And what are we talking on, or about, rather? On our Talking Heads today, we are exploring things to avoid within leadership. So when we're leading others, what should we avoid? What's those pitfalls that we have a tendency to, trip ourselves into over and just make a big mess in the process? So I thought I will share the top 3 that typically I see most often. And working with a lot of leaders moving from a specialization where we know exactly what it is that we're doing and how it's going to work into a leadership position where we now need to help our team do exactly what they need to be doing. And hopefully they know how it all works. These things can typically come up for most of those people quite a few times. Then also working with leaders moving up into leadership, this is not only for new leaders, this is a constant reminder for all of us. Because yes, sometimes we get into a position and we do really well. We remember all these tips and tricks. And as we go along, it might be that we get new team members. It might be that we move into a different area of the organization. It might be that our organization has some changes that it goes through. And throughout these processes, normally we have a tendency to fall back to the things that we are comfortable with. And if we came from a sort of specialization field into leadership, which is it's literally the case for most people, we don't just jump into leadership. We have a little bit of a path we follow. We tend to go back to our roots because it is comfortable. It's easy for us. We know exactly what it is that we're doing. And then, we forget these things that we shouldn't actually be doing. What, you might now be wondering, are these things that I am referring to? Well, the top 3 things to avoid, number 1 is micromanaging. Yes, I knew you knew that I'm going to say that. And especially as specialists, we know what it is that needs to happen, how it needs to happen, how we typically make it happen, the best way we know how to do that. And now we have a team. And said team needs to make it happen. And of course, because we know how to make it happen and we want to help them, we jump in and we start doing stuff. And our poor team members get very frustrated and alienated in the process because we start to look at their processes and the way that they do things. And we actually want them to hurry up. So we're looking over their shoulders all the time. And we end up micromanaging the process and the people and the system. Now, if I were to ask you if you can think about a time when you had a leader or somebody in your team maybe that you worked with that micromanaged you. And I want you to think about how it made you feel. Now, normally, for us, when we get micromanaged, or for me, in any case, when I get micromanaged, I start to feel irritated. I feel that this person doesn't trust me. I feel that whatever the ideas is that I have around this thing won't be valued, so I'm not going to share them. And it really makes it difficult for me to do anything because it feels like I always need to report back or give feedback, and I don't even want to make decisions, right? So it really starts to become, for me, in any case, a space in which I don't really want to be, right? So I'm not excited to go to work. It's another thing that happens. It's really difficult to go to work, and it also just colors everything gray because I don't want to make a decision. I don't want to give any input. I'm really getting more and more disengaged. So that's what happens when we micromanage people. And the micromanaging might not come from a bad place. It might be as a leader that we think, well, I know exactly what it is that this teammate or team needs to do. I know exactly how it works. So I will help them. I want to be there for them and help them. And the way that we help then end up actually not helping. So when we have these situations, we need to think about not the how to necessarily get the results, because yes, we want the results. We also need to think about, okay, how as a team can we do this best? How can we leverage each other's strengths and maybe come up with a different way of doing this thing where I don't need all the feedback? Because literally, as human beings, especially when we go into areas where it is unfamiliar, we're going through a change or a process where we're transitioning things, or we have a lot of pressure, we want some form of security. Most people appreciate some form of security. And the security is in the form of something constant, something we can control. Now, as a leader, if that something is our team, it will lead us down micromanaging, which we really, really do not want to be doing. So what we can the way that we can help ourselves to not micromanage is think about what it is that we need as the leader. What is it that we actually want to get out of this thing? So it might be that, yes, I need to have some input into whatever it needs to be that is going to happen. Or I need to have enough information in order for me to report what's happening to my boss and other stakeholders. So understanding exactly what it is that we require as the leader and then communicating that to the team. So it might be that we don't need the step-by-step, play-by-play, day-by-day activity stuff. Typically, if we are a leader, we don't need any of that. That's important for the person doing the job. They need to know that. We don't. What we need to know is when the project might be starting, when they're going to check in on what the progress is, when the project is planned to be finished. And then between us and the team member or the team, we can then come up with what's the cadence in which we can get our report. Now, this becomes an agreement, not an expectation. So the difference between agreements and expectations is that agreements, all parties involved know exactly what's going on and how to behave and what it is that's required. So we have all the boundaries within which we are working. Expectations is the thing that happens in our own head and that we think other people should know. They do not. They cannot read our minds, and we are all different. So all our expectations will be different. And that is the difference between an agreement and an expectation. So we want to make sure that we have an agreement with our team. That be important for us. And then we can go from there. It will let them know in which areas it is that they have autonomy and where they can work, which boundaries it is that they can play in, and which ones they need to actually come to us so that they can get some form of clarity or decision, or maybe there's a specific amount attached to something, then they need to get some authorization for that. And then they will come to us to get that. So understanding the realm in which it is that they work and which it is that we are working makes it easy for both of us, or both the team and us as a leader, to make it nice and clear as to who's responsible for what and who's accountable for what, in order for us as leaders not to micromanage. So that is the first one. Now, it's the second one. The second one is actually looking at our communication. Yes, communication, communication, communication. As leaders, when you think you have said it enough, say it at least another 10 times. As human beings, we need to hear messages repeatedly. And these days, with everybody having a little bit of FOMO and attention going all over the place, the likelihood that they heard you the first time, very, very low. So we need to make sure that we communicate succinctly, clearly, and continuously, so that the message comes through. It has the added advantage that because we are continuously communicating the same message and doing it in a variety of different ways, people will actually pick it up. And they will notice that we are serious about it. Because the more we communicate the message, the more clear it is to everybody, really, that this is the message. And we know exactly what's going on and how it works. So we can be transparent about what it is that's happening and how it looks like. Now, you might think, well, if I'm not clear about it to start off with, how can I communicate it? Because this sometimes happens, especially in leadership spaces. We might be trying to solve a problem. We're still working things out. Then communicate that. Also, be sure to communicate when would be the next time that we can give you feedback on what is happening. And between that date and when we started the communication, we communicate that we're working on it so that everybody knows we are working on it. And if we need any input, we let them know that. So we want to continuously communicate the message. We want to make sure that our team knows exactly what is going on. So this might look like having weekly meetings. This might look like having one-on-one checkups with our team members. There's a variety of different ways that we communicate. So it might be written communication, it might be verbal communication, it might be informal, asynchronous communication. And we need to continuously do this. It is when we stop communicating, literally nobody knows what's going on. And then everybody gets jittery. Now, whether that is the team, or whether that is our leaders higher up, or whether that is peers that we're working with and collaborating with, when we go radio silent, they literally don't know whether we are okay, we are not okay, the thing that we are working on is tracking along the way it's supposed to be, and we just heads down and bum up, or whether there's been a big disaster and they need to come and help. So again, communication, communication, communication. And then we have the third one that creeps up. And this actually takes the other two and combine that with a whole bunch of other stuff. And that is leading by example. And this is really, really important. So not only does the standards that we accept become the standards that are set. Listen very carefully. The standards we accept, so the ones we do not say anything about, and non-verbally, without doing anything about them, we saying they are good, right? If we haven't said anything when somebody did something, we accepting that behavior, that feedback, that whatever the thing is that the person did or didn't do, or the team did or didn't do, we're accepting that. So the standards we accept is those ones that we will get. So if we say verbally that we want to have this thing by this date, and by this date we don't get said thing, all good and well that maybe there was a few things that happened, comma, and we need to address the fact that it didn't happen, because that is the standard we set. We need to make sure that it is understood that whatever the date was is important. And if we see that we will not hit the date, we need to communicate it back so that we can revise and have a new agreement around what the new date might be and how that would look like. So you can see how when we are going to accept something, so if we didn't say anything, the team will start to think that, you know what, if I don't hit my targets, if I don't get to this date, it's fine. Nobody gets in trouble for it. And then one day we get very upset about these things not happening, and everybody's a little bit surprised because why all of a sudden now it becomes a problem. So being consistent and leading by example, showing the team that if this is the rule, I follow it. So if the rule is that we will give feedback on the date that we have set the things, then that is what we do. I show that that happens. And if they don't do it, I pull them up because I am the leader. So helping them also within leadership, and this is something that a lot of us don't think about. As a leader, we are on the stage continuously. So we are continuously showing others how to treat us and how to treat each other in the team. So if we have a very short fuse and we just fire off all sorts of accusations when something goes wrong, everybody else sees it. Number one, it impacts our psychological safety within that space because now nobody wants to speak up. Secondly, it also shows them that when something happens and it upsets them, they can behave similarly, which means that if we have two team members that typically do not get along too well because maybe they have opposing roles or whatever the case might be, because of our example of literally flying into people when something didn't go the way that we expected it to go, expectations, right? Expected it to go, or maybe it didn't go the way that we agreed that it should go, they will do exactly the same thing, which means we are actually breeding a group, a team that is psychologically unsafe to be in. Now, all of a sudden, everybody starts to try and protect themselves because the leader, and that's us, has shown that, well, that's the way that we behave with each other, and that's the way that our leader behaves with us. So being very, very sure that we continuously look at what we're doing and how it is impacting those around us. Yes, we will get frustrated because we are human beings. Things won't always go the way that we want it to go. That also happens. Understanding that whatever the thing is that we do impact those around us, and it also sets an example for them as to how to handle these situations. I'm sure if you think about some of those funny little home videos where the youngster might talk back to somebody or say something funny, you really listen to what is said, it's most probably an example that they got from the leader in their house, which is mom and dad. So we are constantly leading by example in the way that we act and interact with other people, whether that is physically in the workplace or whether that is within our private life or social circles. So understanding how important it is that we lead by example and make sure that that leadership actually looks like we want it to look like. Because nobody on this planet gets up in the morning going, you know what, I want to be a jerk at work today. We typically don't. We might behave like jerks from time to time, and some of it might be intentional and thought out, and some of it might not be. And that's the big thing. We, as leaders especially, need to be very self-aware as to what it is that we're bringing into the space, because other people will see it and then, of course, look at it and notice what they can take from it. So, what is those top 3 things that we need to avoid as leaders? First off, please, please, please do not micromanage. It is not helping you and it's not helping your team. Secondly, communicate, communicate, communicate. You can never communicate enough, even when you thought that this has now been sufficient. Do it a couple more times. And then last but not least, make sure that you lead by example. Because, yes, you are always on show, and people will look to you to see what standards it is that you are setting in order for them to comply to said standard. So make sure that you set the ones that you actually want and not just give them lip service. And that is our lesson for today. So, as newly minted leaders, as well as those of us that's been in the leadership space for some time, I hope that this was a good reminder for a couple of those things that need some polishing up from time to time. And we can never do enough of making sure that we communicate, lead by example, and leave our team with good, clear expectations Not expectations, agreements, so that we know exactly who's doing what, responsibility for what, and accountable for what. And with that, I hope that you have a fabulous time with your team. Keep growing, keep learning. Until next time. Bye.